So yeah, Kirsten, hi. We've already said hi, but hi again. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good stuff. So you've had the laser for a little while now?
I have just over a year now. I got it in August 2019.
Brilliant. And safe to say you're enjoying you're happy with it?
I'm very happy with it, yes. I would honestly go so far as to say it is the best thing that I've bought for the clinic.
Wow, brilliant, brilliant. So, I mean, how is it with that in mind then? And we'll cover as much as we can in the next half hour or so, but how specifically, for the relevance of today, how has that kind of added value to the clinic, would you say?
So when we were talking about what we were going to chat about on this today, I wanted to speak about how the lasers added value to the clinic, because I think for me it comes from so many different angles. I think when you think about adding value, you think about money, and there definitely is financial value to be added to your clinic through using a laser, which I will touch on as well, and kind of quite happy to share our charges and how we work it and things like that too. I get lots of messages from people because I think a lot of people know that I have a laser, that I love the laser, and they want to know more about it. And I get a lot of messages asking me about, how do you charge? How do you work your appointments and things? So I'm quite happy to speak about that and hope that it helps other people too. But for me, the value that the laser has added is not just about money. I have notes here, so I'll be referring to my notes.
Perfect.
So it's also added value from a marketing perspective. It's added value in that it's given me an additional treatment option for my patients. It's given me happiness at work. I was getting a bit fed up with podiatry, to be honest, and it was feeling a bit stagnant, and I needed to do something different. And I think the laser's given me a nice change of scenery, I feel like, in the clinic. Something different to do. So yeah, it's kind of a four-pronged value added attack from the laser, I think.
Brilliant. Oh, great. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad it's added to your well-being as well. That's
Yeah.
good to know. So you talked about the kind of, or you mentioned very briefly, the kind of additional treatment options that it now allows you to offer. So a little bit around that. I mean, is that something?
Okay, so having the laser in the clinic gives us something else to offer people. Quite often the people who are coming to us for laser are people who have tried lots of other things and nothing has really worked for them, or it's worked, but it's not finish the job, or it's been okay, but they're still kind of struggling. So we can pull all our other tricks out of the bag, and laser obviously isn't a standalone treatment. We would use it alongside orthotics or strapping or exercises or things like that. But for people who have tried those things but are still not quite getting on top of their problem, then laser's given us another option for them. So for example, last week or a couple of weeks ago, I had a nurse contact me who was just in dire straits. She has plantar fasciitis, she's seen podiatrists before, she's had orthotics, she's one of these ones who's thrown money at it. She's gone online and she's bought, cushioning heel pads, she's tried different insoles, she's bought ones online, she's been given insoles. I think she possibly had shockwave as well, and nothing had actually worked for her. And I just said, right, let's just try the laser, all hope is not lost, let's go with this. So she was really keen to try it, because she was kind of at the end of her tether with it. So we did the laser and it's made a huge difference for her in just a week. I gave her that along with a different strapping technique. And she's absolutely delighted because it's finally seems to her like she's got something that's getting on top of her pain. And that's great for our patients, obviously, but it's also good for us. It makes me look really good that I could pull this out of the bag for her. So I started calling the laser my magic wand because we get such good results from it. So, it works for them and it works for us as well. So, yeah. And also just checking my notes here too, I think because the laser has an extended scope out with the MSK stuff as well. I was really interested in what Adam had to say on the wound healing potential and the fungal nail treatment potential. So, it's got lots of different ways to add value and give people different options in
Yeah.
one machine.
No, that's great. And I've got a couple of questions about the additional types of treatment, but which I wouldn't mind asking you about. But you mentioned the S word.
Oh.
Go
I did, yes.
Johnson shockwave.
Yeah.
So you did have a shockwave once, I believe.
I did have a shockwave once upon a time, yes.
There was a
So my shockwave, I bought my shockwave a couple of years ago, and I was really pleased with my new toy, and I was getting referrals from the NHS, and I was doing treatments, and we were getting some good results. Not every time, but nothing's a guarantee, but it produced some good results. But the shockwave was not my favourite thing to use. I'm not a fan of hurting people. And the shockwave does hurt. There's no two ways about it. It nips when you do it. And I used to have this sense of dread when I had a new patient coming in for shockwave for the first time, because you never quite knew how they were going to respond to the shockwave, if they were going to be able to tolerate it, what their reaction would be. And I really dreaded that moment. And with the laser, I don't get that. It doesn't hurt. I almost have to reassure people with the laser, this is honestly doing something, because it just feels like I'm squishing something across their skin and that's it. But yeah, and now I don't have a shockwave anymore.
We get that, just on that point, we get that feedback a lot, actually. We almost want to put a placebo heat in there. So,
yeah.
That feels like we want to do something, or a buzz or something, to put some kind of placebo in there, because the patients genuinely don't always appreciate you doing anything. You're shining a light at them. You've got Christmas, but that's really interesting. And the shockwave, we know shockwave is successful. We know it does what it does. We've got some really good headline stories where we've got some high-end sports guys that just couldn't tolerate the shockwave, but absolutely love the laser. But actually, we also know we've got users out there that have shockwave, because shockwave, they were more familiar with shockwave. Shockwave's been a buzzword for a good few years now. And then they've discovered this particular laser in the last year or so. So they have taken on the laser, having already got the shockwave, and they find it works really well alongside each other on a very high level basis. And this is for my benefit, the high level is, if they use the shockwave, they often want to use that laser to calm it down, to straight away afterwards. So it can work as a really good adjunct alongside. If people are considering, this is my sales pitch here, if people are considering one or the other at the moment, they don't have one, then I would absolutely stand firm and say the laser is far more versatile. So we'll come back to the additional treatments in a second. But if you've already got shockwave, all is not lost, because actually the laser alongside the shockwave. But in your case, you chose to move the shockwave on, and because you were happy with what the laser offered anyway. So great. So the additional treatments, it's really exciting. We had a really good presentation not so long ago from Adam Smith. Those of you that know Adam Smith Podiatry, he did one on wound healing. We as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing these webinars for a good few months now, since kind of lockdown kind of forced us to get onto Zoom. And we typically took the approach, well, what we'll do is each week, although we're doing them every other week now, each week we'll pick a part of the body, or we'll pick a pathology, and we'll have Paul talk about that. And then recently, I just wanted to change it up a bit, really, because Paul's been absolutely brilliant, and hopefully will continue to be brilliant. But we just thought, well, let's do something different. And Adam was happy to do a presentation for us. And I said to him, okay, what are you going to talk about? And I expected him to come back and say one of the big four, one of the most popular ones, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendinopathies, and what have you, heel pain, whatever it might, one of those kind of more popular ones, if you will, if that's the right way of putting it. And I almost fell over when he said wound healing. He'd love to do one on wound healing. And I have to say, me personally, and maybe us as a company, we don't promote the benefit of wound healing enough. We talk MSK, MSK, MSK. So it's really a failing on my part that I hadn't. So I was a bit surprised when Adam wanted to do wound healing, and I was delighted he did. And it was a brilliant presentation. Anybody out there that missed it, it is on the link there to get to it. that I showed earlier on the website, for those who've just joined us. And I can send you the slides of that presentation. So just buzz us on here and we'll send you those slides. So there you go. Wound healing is another thing.
I think if you're looking to spend money on a piece of equipment for your clinic, if you can spend money on one piece of equipment that covers lots of different bases, that's excellent, rather than spending, you know, money on 2 or 3 different things. If you can buy one piece of equipment that'll do multiple things for you, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, they're big investments, all of these bits of equipment. So yeah, if one can do, you know, cover so much of what you see, then that's a good thing. And we're also, we've got some exciting news coming out soon. We're going to start a trial on fungal nail. We know it to work. We already believe it to work. We know it works on fungal nail. The downside with fungal nail, as far as this modality is concerned, is the frequency of how much you have to treat. So just to give people an update, we've got a few volunteers that have got the laser already, and we're going to be going through a 3 to 6 months, probably up to 6 months cycle of treating. I won't go into too many details of the trial at this stage, but because we want to see if it can work in reality in your practice, in your busy practice, in your diary setup, if you will. Does that make sense?
So we've got a Navion Laser, which is just for fungal nail. And it's pretty similar in its way it works as to your MLS nail, in the fact that it's a dual frequency laser, 808 and 950.
Yeah.
Megahertz or whatever it is, megawatts. Anyway, the numbers are the same, and it does it in pulsed and over a set period, and it's all controlled by the machine. You just clip it on and send it off, and it does its thing. And it clears up fungal infection. It can't not, because it destroys the fungal spores, but the fungal cells, you know, the cells in 2 different ways, which it breaks down the cell wall and then the mitochondria with the 2 different light settings, and it's not hot, it's just cold, the same as yours. But the thing is that the nails still look the same, because they're dystrophic from the damage to the nail matrix and nail bed. So while you don't have a fungal nail, you've still got a nail that looks the same, and most people are concerned about how they look. That's the major problem.
Yeah, no, but thank you for your input there, David. That's great. Sorry.
Yeah, then again, that machine costs about 45,000 as opposed to 10, so, and it's only got one use.
Yeah, exactly. So that comes brilliant. Thank you. That comes straight back to Kirsten's point, is that you've got a modality for X amount of pounds that covers, you know, can cover treating a patient with plantar fasciitis now and then fungal the next, and you haven't got a different modality, which, as you say, can be quite expensive.
And arthritis too. You know, you can use the laser for inflamed joints and things. You know, and that's brilliant. You know, although obviously it doesn't fix arthritis or, you know, arthropathies, it reduces the pain, and that's worth an awful lot to people who have lived with, you know, pain. I had a patient who had a sore knee, just kind of degenerative change in her knee, and we did a course of laser on her, and she was just delighted because she'd just lost that pain when she was noticing it sore when she bent down to pick something up, or if she knelt on her knees, it was sore. But after doing the course of laser, that had reduced a lot, and she was just delighted, you know. And to have a machine that can do that, as well as treat, you know, like you say, the big 4, and potentially fungal nails and potentially wounds as well, it's great.
No, that's absolutely right. I know Paul will use, in that scenario that you're talking about there, almost use it as a kind of an ongoing maintenance. So you're setting the scene with your patient. You're not saying, look, your arthritis is gone. Of course you're not. But any flare-ups or any kind of onsets, uncomfortable onsets, what have you, then they've got this kind of ongoing maintenance package, if you will, where they know they can come and just have that flare-up, that inflammation reduced slightly, just to get them back to, going back to walking the dog or whatever activity they want to do. So it can be used very much in that. So it can be used very much in acute stage, but also from a maintenance, if you will, from the chronic side of things. I don't know if, Paul, you want to add anything on that? Putting you on the spot?
Sorry, just have to find my mute button. We're talking about maintenance, we're talking about the wonderful things this laser does. It's a thing which I actually, it's not the obvious things which it does. They're doing research on fungal nail. Yes, it will probably, when they come out with exactly the settings to use, you'll probably find some amazing results with that. We're talking about tissue repair, all sorts of different things. From the 808 nanometers on the tissue repair side of it, where I honestly believe the big advantage of this laser is in pain, in reducing pain. And I've said it to so many people, no machine is the answer to everything. It cannot be. What is the answer is getting people stressing the tissues as they need to. And where they don't is I'll always come back to this, is this this ridiculous inhibition from pain. Pain stops them doing it. Pain puts them into avoidance. Pain means they won't do the exercise they need to change the tissues, so we affect the changes that we really want. Now, what this is doing is, yes, on 808 nanometers, it's sending in the tissue repair element, i.e. by the protein synthesis, creating ATP, flooding the mitochondria of the cells, and we're getting the tissue repair. But it's also what happens at 808 and with the synchronization of the 905, where to me, the best advantage comes, because we're getting a massive reduction of inflammation, which is a cause of pain, by the anti-inflammatory proteins binding onto the ATP. We're also getting a reduction of edema by increasing the Hertz and vasodilation and vascularity. But then at the same time, the 905 nanometers is coming in, super pulse, which basically inhibits pain pathways. So you've got you've got four things which are reducing pain. Obviously the tissue regeneration in its own right is going to reduce pain, but then the reduction of inflammation will reduce pain. The reduction of inflammation of edema will reduce pain. And then you've got the pain inhibition section of this happening at the same time. This puts people in the position where they think, well, I couldn't do that, but I can do it again. And I can do these exercises. I can do my eccentric loading. I can do my movement. I can do my mobility. And this is where we see the massive clinical outcomes, because we are effectively empowering the patient to actually heal themselves just by having this amazing piece of equipment which can actually get them to move better.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Great. I've got one or two questions coming in, which I'm going to keep to the Q&A, so we can keep the conversation flowing. But anybody got any particular questions on what we've covered so far, do send those in to me. Thank you. So, Kirsten, marketing to your patients. You talked about, your patient. Seems like people are aware of it now.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit around that? How easy it was to promote, maybe, for want of a better phrase?
Yeah. So the process of getting the laser worked really well for us. So obviously with the laser, you get your free trial for a few weeks. So when Paul came up to do his training, we had, I think in total we had 12 kind of volunteers. Obviously we didn't see them all at the time, but we had maybe 4 or 5 in on the day when Paul came in, and we did our initial treatments with them. And then we did a further 3 or 4 treatments maybe on each of those. And what we said is, we'll do this for free in exchange for testimonials. So we treated them for free, and 12 out of 12 people that we treated had brilliant results, which kind of blew my mind. And I went, yes, please, I'll be buying this. But those people then gave us testimonials, and we were able to use that in our marketing, which pulled more people in. And over the space of a year, without pushing it too hard, to be honest, we are now getting mostly word of mouth references. And, I'll be socially speaking to somebody, and they'll say, oh, I've heard about this laser that you've got at the clinic, what's that about? And so I tell them about it. And the other week I had a patient, and I see her regularly for routine care anyway, but she's having some issues with arthritis in her foot. And I had said to her a while ago, maybe we could try the laser on it, and I never like to push anything too hard on people, but I just say, this is an option for you. here's a leaflet, don't feel obliged, go away and think about it type thing. So she did that, and she was obviously not convinced, but her neighbour had had laser with Ruth, who works with me, and her neighbour had said to her, get the laser, it's brilliant. So this patient then came back to me and said, well, you know, my neighbours told me about this, so I'm just going to go for it. So she then booked in for a course. You know, it is a small place I live, to be fair, but there's definitely the word of mouth element, and that's kind of where we're at now. And you know, that costs us nothing. So ultimately, you know, it's really between our Facebook page, the things we've put on our website, the testimonials that we got on the back of our trial patients, and the word of mouth that's kind of built up ever since. Our marketing for the laser has really cost us nothing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. No, well, that's great to hear. I mean, you know, word of mouth is everything, isn't it?
Really
you say you're okay. Granted, you're in a smallish community, but nevertheless, you know, that is so important to everybody everywhere, I'm sure. And kind of the starting up, I mean, a bit of a loaded question here, potentially looking for compliments, but the support that you got at the outset with regards to the marketing, was
really good. It was really good. I have said to people before, and you know, I truly mean it. I've never worked with a company, I've never purchased anything from a company that's given as good follow-up care as Celtic, as well as the promotional materials that you get at the start. You know, I couldn't believe it, this massive like brown paper package, and I was like, what on earth is this? And then I unwrapped it, and it's a big leaflet stand for the free leaflets that we got too. So yeah, it's been really good. And if ever I've been stuck with anything, or I've come across a condition that I've been like, oh, I don't know if I can use the laser on this, or how should I use it on this, then I've always been able to use one of the groups or to message Paul, and I've always kind of got a response and help from that. So it's been really good.
Brilliant. Well, that's lovely to hear. And as I say, it was a loaded question, but yeah, it's everything to us. It is very much about the aftercare, and that's why at the start I wanted to just stress that the resources that we have made available, and we're getting better. We like feedback, and we like to do better. Note to self: warn somebody when a large parcel is being sent. So we do take feedback on board as well. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Just to go back to the marketing as well, Steve, I think for us too, having the laser and the word of mouth getting out about the laser, it helps us to stand out amongst the other clinics up here too, because there are quite a few private podiatrists in Orkney. So it just gives us something different, and I think it kind of marks us out as a progressive clinic too. You know, we're looking for new treatment options, and that we're reinvesting, you know, the money that our patients are paying us, we're putting that back into the business to get better treatments for them as well. So yeah, it works from that perspective too.
Yeah. And I think that whole thing about investing in equipment, you know, that kind of brings us to the point of, you know, what you charge and taking that into account. So I think sometimes what people charge can be a bit of a difficult conversation, and you know, some people say, well, should we be charging, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, the two extremes, if you will. So that's an interesting point, is it? But to my mind, you know, you've got to allow the investment of the equipment into what you charge. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the return on investment, when you're talking about adding value to clinic, the return on investment is, at the end of the day, you know, there's the additional treatment options and the happiness at work and all the rest of it, which definitely it brings. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's the nitty gritty of the money that people are interested in too. And I'm quite happy to speak about that, because I think if I'd had more people speak about that, that would have helped me not undercharge for my business from the very start, which it's so hard to pull back from. But I'm there now, so I hit the ground running with the laser. So I do have some facts and figures that I'm happy to kind of share. So at the moment, without pushing it too hard, our laser makes around 10% of our monthly appointments, not 10% of our monthly income, but 10% of our appointments. And there's huge scope to grow this. You know, if we really focused our marketing and did a bit more with that, we could definitely increase that. But just as we've done, like I said, with no marketing spend at all, that's where we're at, 10% of our appointments. So for August, when I did my notes, it was still September, so I haven't looked at the September numbers, but for August, the laser brought us in an additional £1,265 just in gross revenue for the clinic. So there's obviously things to come off that, like our associate payments and things like that. But you know, it gives you an idea of what you could generate by the clinic. So we have a loan to buy our laser, and that loan costs us about £200 a month over 5 years. And I know that you can get a loan over a shorter period of time and pay more per month. And you know that this is kind of where I have to stress what we do is what works for us. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. And that's kind of why the title of the webinar is From One Pod's Perspective, because this is just the way that we work it. If you take out that repayment of £200 a month, that means that our gross profit was £1,065 for August from the clinic. So it's well worth buying, you know, just from that point of view as well. It was well worth it.
What percentage of your turnover is that?
Sorry, David.
So if you want to say, what percentage of your turnover is that?
Our percentage, let me work this out now. So our kind of gross income per month is somewhere about the £8,000, £9,000 per month. So yeah, that kind of varies, obviously. And that's just based on 1 month, and this is gross numbers I'm speaking, without the overheads. But
yeah, and as you say that they're obviously really positive figures. They're great figures. Something that costs you to put it very black and white, something costs you £200 and it gives you a return of £1,200.
Yeah.
And you know, that's layered on top of the fact that you, as you said at the outset, you enjoy using it, the patients enjoy it, kind of thing. Yeah, there's, you know, it's not just about the shilling and pence, but it really does. Thank you for sharing that with us, by the way. That's just underlines that, you know, as an investment, if we want to put a tangible return on it, then that's quite easily done. With, by the sounds of it, going back to one of your earlier points, with minimal effort. It wasn't something
minimal effort. The machine's so easy to use. You know, it pretty much does it all for you. I mean, literally, depending on what head you get for it, it could do it all for you. But you know, I also get asked a lot about how we structure our fees and, you know, how we work it, how do you fit that into your clinic time and things like that. So to touch on that as well, the way that we work it is we do 30-minute treatments for each laser appointment. So if sometimes if we have somebody coming in for a first appointment and we think that there might be a laser included, we'll leave a bit extra time for that, or we'll give them a minimum amount of laser and then get them to come back in again. But usually we leave 30-minute treatment times for each laser. So our routine treatment is also 30 minutes, and where we are, our routine treatment cost is £38. Our laser for a single treatment is £55. So if we're doing a 30-minute laser treatment versus a 30-minute routine treatment, that gives us an additional £17 per treatment.
Sure.
So that's kind of, we've got a £5 surcharge on at the moment, so that's bumped our prices up a bit, but that's where we are just now. So, you know, already you're speaking about that additional £17 per treatment. So it's worth doing the laser versus routine treatments. You know, if you had a choice of doing one or the other, you'd pull the laser treatment in if you could. And what we do as well is we sell them in courses of 4. I honestly don't know why I've chosen that number. It just seems to be it's easier to round it up. So we say £200 for a course of 4. And what I do with some people, because not everybody wants to commit to that, you know, they don't know if it's going to work for them. So the way I work around that is I say, that's fine, you know, we can do this one-off treatment, it'll be £55. If you come in next week, we can do another one-off treatment for £55, and the same for the 3rd week. But if you're coming in for that 4th session, then we'll charge you £35 for that, and then that equals £200 price of the course. So people aren't losing. They're not losing out by not committing to the full.
Yeah,
kind of keeps it fair. And I feel if they've committed to us to coming in for those 4 treatments, then that shows that we're committing to them as well by not charging them extra for that. It feels better to do it that way.
Yeah, that sounds great. And that's kind of, you're not forcing them to make that decision of a £200 commitment, 4 treatment commitment, and then conversely, if they ended up needing the 4th, they're not regretting their decision at the outset, and that will just create bad will to your patients, which is the last thing you want.
And then if they need more than the 4, you know, if they needed a 5th or a 6th or whatever, then I would charge them £50 for that. So it equals the cost of a single session within a course, if that makes sense. So again, they're kind of getting a bit off for committing to us.
So you said you don't know why you chose, well, the 4 was for nice, easy numbers. But how often has 4 not been enough? 4 treatments?
Not often, not often. I think we've maybe had, well, for me, I think I've maybe had 2, maybe 3 people who have come back, and they've just had literally an additional 1 or 2,
Sure.
and that's all they've needed.
And the half-hour slot, I mean, the time the treatment typically takes, it doesn't cause a problem. You can always get them within that half an hour.
Yeah, you can always get them within. And it leaves a bit of time for chat as well. You know, I always like to sit down just for 5 minutes at the start and say, how did you get on after last week? And I type it all up into my notes before I forget, you know. So we do that at the start, and then we do their laser for them. And yeah, and then they go and they book in for the next week. So it works really well. It's not rushed. I don't like things to feel rushed. I don't want to be stressed. I want time to write up their notes and things too, so that the 30 minutes work well.
And on that, just a bit of detail for the audience, if you will. Typically, each treatment, the protocols are in place for anything that you're going to treat, and the treatments will typically be between 3 and 10 minutes. Whatever you punch in, whatever you say, right, I've got this patient and this is what I want to treat. Yeah. The output from the machine will be anything between 3 and 10 minutes, typically 6 and 7 minutes, the average, I guess. Yeah. And what you might do, and again, I might even bring Paul into this, but that allows you to do 2 types of treatment, because you can do the trigger point treatment, so we can really get specific to where we want to treat. And this is one of the real benefits of this class 4 laser that you haven't been able to do historically with class 4 lasers because of the thermal build-up. So you can do trigger point treating, where we are actually holding the diode where we want it and treat where we want it to, but also then we can do what they call global approach, so we can treat around the affected area as well. So if you wanted to do that for both, and then that, if you put those protocols in for that patient, that will come back with something like 6, 7, 8 minutes. So you can do 2 lots within your half an hour.
We tend to do the scan phase. We do the scan phase for everybody, but just that kind of global thing. And I always explain it to patients when they come in, what we're going to do is this phase, and this phase. Whether they want to know that or not, I'm not sure, but I'm someone who likes to have things explained to me, so I explain it to other people too. So I always tell them we're going to do the scan phase first, and this is just kind of the general warm up, and you know, gets your tissues ready, if you like, for the next phase. And then we do the pathology setting, and usually we do a couple of trigger points as well, and it works really well for us, really well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now there is actually a very good question coming from Lindsay on that point when we're talking about the 4. And Lindsay, you are absolutely right. When we do the demonstration, when we do our training, and when we're talking to you guys to take the laser on, we do talk about the 3-2-1 protocol. So we typically say 3 treatments this week, 2 next week, 1 the following. That's not in stone. That is something that we kind of believe in and we work on. Kirsten's, from her own experience, has obviously found she's been able to do it within 4. But you can signpost it to your patients. 3-2-1 is a good way of suggesting to your patients. But invariably, you might not need to see them after the 4th or 5th treatment, and your patient's only going to thank you for that. So yeah, it's a good point you bring up, Lindsay. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think for me as well, it was about fitting it into my clinic, and we're so busy just now. We're booked. I mean, I'm booked up for about 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and I would just never be able to fit that in. You know, I'm working late each night as it is to try and fit people in. So to get a new patient and to say I need to see you 2 more times this week, you know, and twice next week, and then once the week after, I don't have the capacity in the clinic to do that just now. And sometimes it's really difficult for patients to find the time to come in to do that as well. So I think that's kind of why we started this 30-minute, you know, kind of do a bigger treatment, if you like, just to see how it went, because it was all new to us at the time. And I think because it's worked well, we've just stuck with it. It fits our diary and it suits the patients too.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm conscious of the time, so I think thank you ever so much, Kirsten, for your sharing that. But I'm going to maybe fire one or 2 more questions that have come from the floor. at you. So let's have a look. I don't want to miss any. I'm going to go right back to the start. Let me read through one or two. Hello, Claire. You're welcome. You're here. You said you were late. Apologise for being late. Nice to see you, Claire. Great points. Actually, Barty just dropped a message. Thank you, Barty. So pleased you've joined us today. Great point about reinvesting. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a key thing, isn't it? You know, what you charge is not just today's costs, it's what you've invested in. And I'm a big believer in that. So glad you like that point. And that's almost another conversation again, isn't it? With one or two experts in the podiatry world. We maybe need to come back to that. What else have we got? Outlay, and any outlay per patient. From Fenella, I guess do you mean kind of a running cost? Essentially, no, if that's what you mean. I mean, there's no parts that, that you need for each patient. The running cost is the electricity, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no penetrable part.
In like servicing or something over however many patients you saw per year, but no, there's not really any overheads other than your time.
No, there's no Swift, for example. The you have to replace certain bits.
Yeah,
that's a completely different thing. There's nothing like that. Just the running cost of the electricity, I guess, would be the full answer. How much are you charging? I think we've covered that. How much you charging per visit per session? So just to recap what Kirsten does, and Kirsten will be the first to say this is just what works for her. It's just what, nothing's in stone, and we can all do different things and have different things. But Kirsten's normal, I'm going to recap Kirsten, but tell me if I get any numbers wrong. So Kirsten's normal fees are £38 for a half an hour session. But for laser, she charges £50, and she'll offer a block package of £55, and she'll offer per session, still within the half an hour, so it fits in the diary. But we'll offer a block session of 4 treatments for £200, so a bit of a saving. If the patient doesn't choose to take that package up, and they do end up coming back the 4th time, Kirsten kind of only charges the £35 on the 4th treatment. So essentially, we're looking at £50 per session on the laser, as opposed to your standard fees of 38. So I hope that answers that question. Here we go. I'm going to share this one with you all. Thank you, Jonathan. I didn't know Jonathan was here, to be honest. Jonathan Small. David, David, thank you for your contribution. And Jonathan's just coming back on that. I dare say you can all read this, but it's a good point, so I'm going to read it as well. David, I have had low-level laser therapy for 25 years. Results with this MLS laser blows that away. So thank you, Jonathan. That's great. And you've responded, Jonathan. See, I'm a man. I can't do 2 things at once. I'm talking and reading. That's a pretty good skill for me to achieve. Here we go. What else have we got? From Tim. Hi, Tim. Is that whole session a laser treatment, or are you doing other things as well in that session?
Usually just laser. The initial treatment, if we're doing a laser for the first assessment, then obviously we do an assessment. If there's strapping or taping or anything like that, then we do that at the first session. But then any follow-up sessions, the 30-minute ones, would be just laser. Unless there was something that popped up, that we needed to revisit, it would just be laser.
Brilliant, thank you. Do different treatments take different amount of time? Just to recap, typically the protocols will be anything from 3 minutes to 10 minutes, and invariably they're about 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, smaller areas, like if you're doing, like a plantar fasciitis versus Achilles tendinosis or a knee, the smaller areas take less time, but I charge the same for all, because again, you never, some people like to speak a bit more, you might need to get a bit more history back off them, so I always leave half an hour, regardless of how long I know the actual treatment itself is going to take, and again, takes that pressure off of me, because if I've got extra time, then that's great, rather than running short on time. So
perfect.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you. Here we go, another question from David. Kirsten, how do you decide what setting to use outside of the presets?
I usually stick with the presets, to be honest. I don't vary too much of it. If I do anything, once I've kind of got to know a person, and depending on how they've got on after maybe the first or second session, I might adjust a little bit. You know, if they're getting on fine, then I might actually whack it up a little bit so that they're getting a bit more, you know, up the percentage a wee bit. But generally I stay pretty close to the presets, and I always do the trigger points as Paul advised during the training. I do them at 10 hertz and 50%, but everything else I stick quite close to the presets, really.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, question from Kathy. What about the maintenance, annual cost, services, parts? Oh, I can't see the end of the question. If any. Yeah, no replaceable parts typically. The service maintenance we do, we recommend an annual service and calibration. We do that, we come on site and do that, so you're never without the machine. The charge for that is £328 plus VAT, I want to say. I think I'm right in saying that, ballpark figure about that. So not an inconsiderable amount of money, but it is a full service for a medical device, obviously, and that includes us coming to you, whether you be in Orkney or whether you be in wherever else. Where else? Tim in Kent or wherever else. Yeah, I hope that answers that. Thank you, Fidela. I think we've answered your question there, I think is what you're saying. Okay, question from David again. Kirsten, how in-depth is your risk assessment and consent form?
Basically, I'm trying to think off the top of my head what that consent form looks like. I think we outline, you know, what the laser does, kind of how it works, and the briefest of sentences, the most understandable words, if that makes sense. And then we outline the contradictions and make sure that nobody has any contradictions, and just get them to sign that. It's not really vastly more in depth than it would be for any other treatment. So yeah, it's just to make sure they understand the treatment that they're getting, that they don't have any of the contraindications, and then just sign it. I think because we also have in our new patient form a good bit about, you know, consent for treatment and everything else, that they'll sign that as well. So yeah, it's pretty standard, I think.
Hi, just to ask about cleaning, is it just the tips that you would wipe over like anything? Because obviously at the minute we're so over the top about cleaning, and rightly so. So yeah. Yeah,
it is literally the tip. I mean, the end of the dio will touch the skin, will touch the patient. So yeah, it would just be a case of wiping that with a non-alcoholic wipe. It should be typically fine. Or
okay, fine.
Paul, Jenny? Just going to check with Paul.
Yeah. I tell you what I wipe it with, a bit of HOCl, which is hypochlorous acid, which is what the body releases against inflammation, against invading bodies. It's if you've seen the, you can get 25 litres of this stuff for about 50 quid. And we clean it. We spray the patients when they come in with HOCl, so they get a quick spray of HCl. It's the best. It's the most effective cleaner of everything, and it costs an hour. Very, very cheap.
And I'd forgotten, Lindsay. Thank you. Clinicept is one. Is that
correct.
what it's called?
Yeah.
Clinicept. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Lindsay.
good.
The manufacturer recommends something like Clinicept. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, thanks.
Alrighty.
And just to ask, was the service that's an annual service, isn't it?
It was annual service, yeah, which is recommended.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Alrighty.
Probably a bit more of, sorry to just ask a bit more of a clinical question. So contraindications, is that just normal red flags? I mean, is there anything that we might not consider normally by, you know, because I've not used a laser in 25 years, and that was for wound care. Yeah.
Okay.
It's primarily the obvious things. What we're doing is we're activating at a cellular level. So if you have somebody with a cancer, an active cancer, you don't treat them. I won't treat them even if, you know, if they've got cancer of the, I don't know, thyroid cancer, and they've got a foot problem, I'm not going to treat them. It's just that you don't know where we are in the state. If they've had the all clear from the consultant and they're in remission, then treat them as much as you like. That's cancer. I don't treat pregnant mothers because it's a cellular activity. We don't want to speed up the problems. We don't stick it over a pacemaker. We can stick it around the body and stuff like that, but don't stick it directly over a pacemaker. We don't stick it right over the growth plates on a child, on the long bones of the lower limb, because there's plenty of evidence that it could have an effect, i.e. make that bone stop growing. I've never come across a single situation where this has happened, but just don't use it on the over the growth plates. I think I've covered everything.
Bleeding, any active hemorrhage.
Yeah, any active hemorrhage. There is, what they're really saying now is even if you have a patient on prescribed blood thinners, apaxaban, heparin, warfarin, then don't use it.
Are you referring to that question about aspirin last week?
Yeah, aspirin, anything like that. No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Just keep it in your mind as a slight precaution. You know, if they're some not taking the mini aspirin, taking big aspirins, it's quite an effective blood thinner, and just take into account the pathology that they have got going on. A lot of people just take aspirin for the sake of taking aspirin as an avoidance of a stroke ever happening. So certainly with the mini aspirin, I don't worry about it. And I think that is about it. Anything else, Jenny?
No.
Okay.
Kirsten?
I can send a kind of slide with the contraindications, part of one of the slides that we do. So if you need more on that, but Paul's pretty much covered most of it there. Yeah.
But apart from that, it's an incredibly safe machine. Well, the biggest problem you can get is a rebound effect. You get a rebound effect if you put in far too much power into the tissues, especially on an acute pathology. So if you've got an acute pathology and you start knocking the joules right up to God knows what by using the CPW, everything like that, then you're asking for a rebound effect, unless it's a very, very chronic situation. And I always think about knee arthrosis. I will sometimes go in the very first time using my CPW button on there with a continuous weight, which will knock the joules right up. But that is something which we can get away with. Everything else, just be fairly careful. And the settings, Kirsten's absolutely right. The settings that they give you are very, very good. We might just adjust the intensity a little bit if it's a very chronic situation. But don't go crazy unless it is a massively chronic problem, like not an arthritis, but you know, a knee arthrosis. Big bone in there, bang. Put loads of joules in there. And if they ring up and say, I'm in a lot of pain, say, oh, look, it's that idiot Paul City. He told me to do it. So whatever. But no, you're fine. That is where you're going to have good treatment.
And it has to be said on the rebound effect, that does happen very rarely. You know, the patient is, 24 to 48 hours, they're kind of back to where they were when they first saw you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. If they have the rebound effect, just say, look, don't worry. 48 hours, you'll be back to where you were.
Okay. Thanks for all sticking around. If you're all happy, I've got a couple more questions. From Lindsay, this one, and this is my favourite question about mobilisation. Question for Paul: what exercises do you suggest to give the same effect of shockwave on chronic?
Well, my point is this: if you're using shockwave, you're doing exactly the opposite to what we're doing with laser. In shockwave, you're actually smashing the tissues to start a brand new inflammation to try and start a new repair process. What I used to work in the military. What we didn't use shockwave. We could actually refer out shockwave if we needed, but what we do, we really concentrate on a massive eccentric loading program. as per Hack and Alfredson's protocol. So 3 lots of 15, 3 times a day. If you're doing the Achilles tendon, knee flexed, knee extended. So and then it's progressive. So we start sticking a rucksack on the back and, you know, 5 kilograms, 10 kilograms, 25 kilograms. We are really breaking down these tissues, which is causing a bit of an inflammatory response anyway. So it is actually doing in many ways what the shockwave is doing. But then with the laser, I will get patients with an Achilles tendinosis. I get them doing this huge amount of eccentric loading at the same time as I'm using the laser. Sorry, not at the same time, but I use the laser as well to actually reduce their pain, because this comes back to this inhibition. If we're doing this massive eccentric loading, Hack and Alfredson, who devised the program, he devised it on elite athletes, and he'd say to them, the only reason you stop doing this eccentric loading is if the pain is just so bad you can't possibly do that. Now your average Joe Bloggs is going to stop long before we get to what the elite athletes is going to do. But we want to get the pain so that they don't actually feel the pain nearly as much. And this is where the laser is phenomenal, because we can get them doing their eccentric loading and we can reduce the pain. So in fact, they're doing much more of the tissue adaptation that is required to get the changes. Does that make sense?
It does. I didn't scroll down and get the full question. So actually it was on chronic plantar fasciitis on the particular stretches. Any particular stretches on those? But thank you for that. That was brilliant.
Oh, sorry.
I think Lindsay's question I didn't completely ask was same effect of shockwave on chronic plantar fasciitis along with the laser. Is that right, Lizzie?
I get a lot, you know, hallax up against the wall and trying to do the stretch, weight bearing, coming into work on the soleus, on the knee bend towards the wall. So we're actually working on that. That is the sort of stuff we want to be doing.